Hey everyone, welcome to lesson 6 of the image gallery project. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at a very fundamental piece of CSS called the CSS Box Model. So, head on over to our W3 schools. Definitely have the workflow ready, as always. GitHub to the image gallery repo. Make sure that your IDE is set and ready to go, and you have the index.html and style.css files in the editor ready to go. And finally, head on over to W3 Schools and CSS. Open that tutorial and just all the way down to here. If we click on that, that's our box model. All right, so we may not make much of a dent in the project here, but this is a necessary fundamental piece for CSS we will be using every single project. So this is a great utility lesson to come back to if needed. Now let's take a look here. All HTML elements, we've mentioned this in the past, can be considered as boxes. And it's up to us to position, move, and so on. And a lot of that happens with the box model. So the box model is essentially a box that wraps around every element. It consists of margins, borders, paddings, and the actual content. So the content is going to be on the inside. If there are any padding, that padding will expand out to the border and leave some room around or surrounding the content. Border can be as thin as 1 pixel, 5 pixels in size or so on. It could be solid, dotted, you name it. And it could also have a color, and that's just an outline around the element. And then finally, the margin moves one entire element away from others. So let's see if we can take a look and put this into practice. Okay, so remember in the index.html we have the body consisting of 2 basic children. The header containing all of the headings, H1, H4, H6, and the section containing in essence the 3 pieces within the div for the image card, the image itself, the site, and the paragraph citing the author. So we're going to look at specifically the header here and the children, the headings. So let's come on over to our CSS file, open that up, and I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. Something new on the screen I'd like you to put into your notes. On line 9, if you put /*, that begins a comment, and then you just want to end the comment with */, and that will basically say anything from that opening and closing comment will not be read by the browser. So comments are meant, they're great pieces of organization if you are working collaboratively with a team. You could, or just for yourself as you work day to day, you could section off notes to yourself or key pieces of the project and what that section of code or markup has to do, or the intention behind it. But another key piece about comments is, as students, we could use it for notes. So what I've done here are CSS syntax notes. Selector, and notice on line 13 that selector is the heading. And then inside of the curly brackets, property, and the property we're looking at for header is background color. And then value, and the value is blue. So it's selector, then open brackets, curly brackets, property colon, value semicolon. You could have it all on one line, but notice it's more customary, if I'm using proper English there, which I don't think I am, is to split up and allow for multiple lines of property and values to apply to one selector, and that's very common. Right now we're just going to take a look at background colors only, just for visual purposes, to see how this box model works. And stop your video right now and please type in header and the background color blue. Then you could copy all that. So highlight all that, hit Control C, come on down to 17, hit Control V to paste, remove this selector header, put H1, remove the color to put crimson, and continue that all the way down to H6. Pause video, come on back, make sure you have that typing done, and then rejoin us. All right, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for taking that time. So now you should have the notes in place the syntax notes just as a reference, so we're not constantly going back to the W3 Schools page. And then header H1, H4, and H6. Let's take a look and see how this works. Let's make sure that you hit Control S to save, or go up to File, Save here, and back to Index, Preview, and let's put that preview in the screen. Okay, and I'm going to pop this preview open into a new tab. There we go. So I'm going to come back to my editor and close that out here. So one feature, if you have administrative rights, and apologies to students if you do not, is you could go to any web page. So if you're at home and you have your administrative rights to your own computer, you could move anywhere in a web page, right click, and go down to Inspect. So this is not just with an IDE, but this is any web page at all. And you could see the source HTML structure, and notice what we have here. If I pull the body down, if I move to the body, everything is highlighted. Within the body, I'm highlighting the header now, and everything in the header, there's my 3 headings. If I slide down to section, now I'm highlighting the 3 things in the section. I could also pull down and look at H1, H4, and H6. So it's hovering or highlighting those sections. But more importantly, take a look at when I move the cursor and click on header over to the right hand side, there's my box model. It's telling me that that element has a certain size. But it looks like there's a little bit of room up on top here. So let's highlight the body for a minute. And lo and behold, take a look. When we click on body, there's a margin of 8 there that we did not put there. So a lot of browsers have their own defaults. And some of them are consistent, some are slightly different. So many developers try and reset that. We won't get into too much of that, but we will. Let's change and put margin to 0 for body. And then also, if you notice, if I click on H1, 4, or 6, there's a little bit of a default margin that goes with the headings as well. So right now, let's get rid of those margins. Let's head on over to Style, and I'm going to go right underneath my note. So let's type in a new selector, body, open curly brackets, and hit enter. So now we have a spot, and I'm going to just type in margin as my property and 0 as my value. Nice and easy. If we just highlight over that, Control C, put that in our clipboard, and let's place that in every single element that we have here. So I'm putting margin 0 in all. And yes, there is a more universal way to do this. We'll get to that in future lessons, but right now we're just looking at the box model here. Now I'm just looking here. If you notice over here, I did not plan this, but there's an error here and there's a little caution, and I could not quickly find it, but after Crimson, I deleted the semicolon, so there we go. All right, let's hit Control S. Let's come on back to our preview, refresh the preview, and notice now the header now moves right up against the corner. There's my H1, my H4, my H6, and if you look on the diagrams of our box model, there's no padding, margin, or border. So that was intentional. So now each one of these, header, no margin, padding, or border, the element is there. Same with H1, H4, and H6. So let's actually now experiment with border only. And if you forget, like I do often, how border works, we're going to come down back to our W3 Schools, and I'm going to slide all the way down to something called References and go to CSS Selectors, much like we did with HTML. This allows us to see a lot of different selectors available to us. So right off the bat, there's border, and notice there's a lot here. So again, border bottom, there's a ton of different border things that you could do, and you could snoop around those and check those out for the different features that you might want to apply to your project. Right now, we're just going to look at how the basics are set up, and I'm going to copy this one right here. Border takes 3 values. It could take 3 values. The size or width of the border, the shape, is it solid, dotted, or so on, and a color. So I'm going to just capture that in my clipboard, Control-C. Come on back to, let's see, where do we want this? We want it around heading, the header, excuse me. So I'm going to put a border there, and let's just change that color to black. And let's see what that looks like. Refresh, and lo and behold, I now have, if you highlight header here, I have a black 5-pixel border surrounding all of the children of the header. Basically, that's the header element, open and close tag, with a 5-pixel border around it. Head on over to here, and there is our indicator for 5. All right, let's keep going with this and see what else. What does padding do? So if I come into header here and I just put padding, and I want to change padding to just, let's say, 25 px, which is for pixels, and keep that there. Then Control S, remember we need to do that for this to take effect. And now, interesting. So let's see what's going on here. Remember, you got to be consistent with what are we looking at here. We're looking at or highlighting everything in the header tag, open and close, which is including our 3 children. And what we did basically was we pushed the 3 children into a center, so to speak, and we moved or added padding inside of the border with 25 pixels all the way around. Now, for every single one of these, margin, border, and padding, you could just add to the top, to the bottom, left or right, one at a time, all together, 2 at a time, and just go to W3 Schools and check out to see how to actually get the syntax for that to work. We're just applying 25 across the board, so that's why just indicating it once says put it in all 4 spots. Okay, so another interesting piece here is the background color blue popped up. Why is that the case? Well, if you take a look, without padding, that background color blue was being hidden or overridden by the cascading effect of H1, 4, and 6. We only saw the crimson, light green, and yellow until we moved those children to the center, if you will, or moved them 25 pixels in every direction with some padding, so to speak. All right, so we've got padding, we've got border. Now margin is going to actually take this entire rectangle and slide it away from other elements. So let's see how that looks. We're just going to take that and put, oops, I'm sorry. We already have margin up here. I forgot about that. So let's change margin to 50 px. So I'm just going to go back up to the line where it was 0, hit Control S, and let's see what happens here. And voila, notice now the margin has slid that entire element, including the border, the padding, and all of the children, away from every direction, anything around it, by 50 pixels. So if we come over here, there's our 50, and notice it's highlighted. There's our border of 5, our padding of 25, and our element. That is the box model. Now, box models can be applied to every single element. So if I just highlight, excuse me, let me copy and paste this. I'm going to cheat really quick here just to show this. Let's go down to H1, and since we're going to pull in the margin, so I'm going to delete that, hit Control V. Let's just copy everything the same way. Let's see what happens with our H1. So now we're applying that border, margin, and padding not only to the header, but now to the Hawaii H1 heading. Let's refresh. And notice now there's Hawaii with, let me highlight it. There's our margin now moved it away from all of the other elements, We have a border of 5, padding inside of the border around the element, and then finally the element itself. So as you can see, this starts moving elements around the page and gives you some separation. And I could continue all the way down doing the same thing for H4 and H6. Let's hit Control S, and one final time we'll see everything move. Now I have, if you highlight the H6, there's the box model with margin, border, and padding. There's my box model for H4, my H1, and finally the header. So every single element, child and parent, can have this box model applied to it. And it simply adds distance within the content and within the border, or distance between other elements. So that is the box model, and the explanation of the different parts are right down here. The content of the box where text and images appear. So again, this does not have to be just text. It could be anything, any element you're putting in there, images included. Padding clears an area around the content. It's transparent. Border goes around the padding and content, and margin clears an area outside of the border. So that is the box model. Going forward, we're going to use this quite a bit. So thank you for sticking around to learn the fundamentals of the box model. In the next video, we will start tackling all of the CSS. It's not too much to begin wrapping up the image gallery and really putting some style behind that card. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you in the next one.